Join former FBI senior forensic examiners Becky Passmore and Stacey Eldridge as they dig into the world of digital forensics, one bite at a time. Now leading their own consulting firms and educating the next generation of cyber sleuths. These badass babes of digital forensics bring sharp insight, real-world case experience, and a dose of humor to the bits and bytes that build today's investigations. From deep dives into business email compromise and ransomware attacks, Becky's specialty, to cracking the complexities of iPhone forensics, Stacey's obsession. This podcast delivers insider knowledge for professionals, students, and true crime techies alike. If you've ever wondered what really happens when the digital trail is all that's left, tune in and start parsing the truth.
Welcome to Parsing the Truth, one bite at a time. We are the digital forensic podcast that gets a little true crime-ish and a little techie-ish, and we've been going back in time, and we've been talking about current cases and all sorts of things. Now, here's a fun fact. This is episode number 26.
Well, let me do this, right?
Yeah, 26. So, Becky, we are halfway through the year, 26 podcast episodes. What do you think?
Man, all I can say is I love it. I love the time we get to spend on talking about cases, on talking about different crimes, on talking about how evidence has been from the beginning to now. And I just look forward to all of our episodes,
Right.
And getting back together each week.
Right.
Yeah.
And this format looks a little different because we're together here live in person. We are poolside, lovely palm trees and pool for everybody to enjoy behind us. And why are we together right now, Becky?
Because we spent the week at the Oxygen Forensic Conference,
Yep.
where we actually have a episode coming to you where we presented it live.
Yep.
And then we've spent the rest of the week working on different activity and
Yep.
information and doing things and visiting people. So
Yeah.
we're together.
And it's so funny because we had episode 23 drop on October 23rd.
That's right.
And then episode 25 is live at the Oxygen Forensics Conference, where we were talking about logic and legacy.
That's right.
And the past 25
5
years.
years, right.
And it's episode 25. And now
Right.
here we are, 26,
Yes.
halfway through the year.
That's right.
But what we wanted to do was look back on some of the episodes that we've already talked about. And we were counting it up. And I remarked, I was like, wow, we did 6 episodes on Casey Anthony.
I know.
There was a lot to unpack there.
There was a lot. And that was so much fun, too, because we got to meet and interview and discuss with so many different examiners. We got to watch, well, some of the recordings, read
Yep.
up on the cases.
Yep.
We got to meet John Bradley here in person.
We met him in person.
Yes.
So we emailed back and forth to get him on the show. And then we did the podcast episode with him. And then we talked with him after the podcast, after he'd found some insider knowledge from the Orange County Sheriff's Office. And then he was also here at the Oxygen Conference as well. So we met him live and in person down here in Orlando. So that was fun.
That was fun. So I feel like we've grown with this podcast.
Yes.
We've expanded our network and our knowledge of other forensic experts that
Yes.
are out there doing this.
Yes.
And they're so excited and willing to share their cases and their experience. And not only are we looking back, but we're looking forward because we have so many other cases and experts that we're going to have on our show in the next 26 more episodes.
Right. And I think it's interesting because as people have found out that we have this podcast, and we thank everybody who's listened
Yes.
and who has shared it. You're helping us get the word out. But every time we run into someone, they find out we have a digital forensics podcast. They're like, man, have I got a case for you?
Yeah.
Have I got a story for you? Every forensic examiner we run into has at least that one case that we're like, something unbelievable happened.
Right. And I would say we have 26 more episodes already ready to start recording with our experts and with our friends, our network. So if you have something and you want to share it, you want to be a part of it, reach out to us. We're always ready to hear more.
Yeah, and apparently the highway is right behind us, so hopefully that doesn't come out too loud on the recording for you. But so we started off with BTK as the first sort of case we did. We had some introductory episodes. And the thing I find amazing about BTK is there's a lot of right information out there and there's a lot of wrong information out there, which is why we did the fact versus fiction. And some of that comes from, like, there's the book that we used.
That's right.
And there was wrong information in that. And then luckily Randy Stone reached out and was like, Becky, I've got some of the correct information for you. And then we still have other people who are like, no, that's not right. And it's hard to get it all out, right? Because we can't give you every single detail in every single podcast. So some of the stuff we have to talk about at a very high level. But I think some of this stuff is just ingrained. It's been infamous, and some of these cases are old, right? Like BTK is old, but it's foundational. But there are still misnomers, and people think they know the case, but they didn't work the case, so
Right.
so they don't know the case. And this is another one of those cases that never went to trial, so not
Right.
everything is out there.
Right. But as I was telling Stacy, I constantly am seeing new documentaries. I was telling Stacy
Yep.
there was a new documentary that hit Netflix recently.
Yep.
I'm the daughter of BTK killer, which was fascinating because hearing his daughter's perspective of what they went through as a family when he was identified as a BTK killer. So if you get a chance, watch that. It's really, really good.
Yeah. And then next up, after we did and BTK was kind of our first case episode, and so it was probably a little rough. We were learning, we were figuring out how to do the podcast. What should we say? What should we not say? And I think you'll find, like, when we got into my first case that I testified on, that was the voyeurism, the drugs, and the
bicycle,
masked man on a bicycle. And we really dug down into my testimony. And so that was like a 3-parter, I believe. And I spent like half a day on the stand. I think you'll find that's an average amount of time, like a half a day on the stand to say what you did, even if it was the simplest of cases, because you got to bring it all in and introduce it. If we did that one again, would it be so long?
Probably not.
I don't know. But, we were filling it out, and you can listen to as much of that testimony as you want to.
That's right.
And if you need more experience and lessons on testimony and just to kind of hear how it happened to someone else, that might be interesting for you to go back and listen to all 3 parts of that again, or recommend it to somebody else. And another pretty popular episode that was at the front was like how to get into digital forensics.
Right.
So why did we do that one?
Well, there's so many people that reach out to us. Even now, people reach out to us, especially now that they're listening to our podcast. They reach out to us and they're like, hey, I really love the podcast. I really love your experience. I really love your knowledge. How can I get into digital forensics? And we really want to share that, those opportunities, share those insights, because Stacy and I both have our own side consulting firm that we work other cases from, but the experience comes from going to work, whether it's at the federal government or with law enforcement or with consulting firms, or even with the forensic companies that you're testing, you're validating, you're learning the tools, you're understanding how it works. But I would say the biggest conception we have with how to get into digital forensics and what to do is where do they start? And so we were able to share that podcast to help you get some knowledge on that.
And you'll see a lot of discussion with this on social media, places like LinkedIn especially. They're like, is digital forensics an entry-level job? And, we said it then and we'll repeat it now, but you've really got to know how to use a computer well to be able to do digital forensics, because you've got to know normal so you can find the abnormal. And so you've got to get that fundamental knowledge and experience down first. And kind of what I see in some of the classes that I teach at the university level is people are having just a tough time, like, using a computer. They don't know how to screenshot. They don't know how to screenshot a window instead of the whole desktop.
Right.
They don't know how to use Excel. And these are like fundamental tools that we have to use all the time. And if you're struggling at that level, how are you going to use an advanced digital forensics tool?
Right. And it also goes back to understanding the tool, understanding the computer, understanding technology, but it's that curiosity, it's that
Yes.
investigative mindset. It's that I getting a little bit of information and seeing what clues are available to help you move through the case. And so a lot of it is technology, and that is the basics that you should know, technology. But
Yep.
then it's moving into being able to have that investigative mindset, be curious, ask questions, think about being a person that is conducting criminal activity on their computer or their cell phone, how they would be doing it. And if you utilize an iPhone, or if you utilize an Android, or if you utilize a Mac or a Windows computer, how does it operate? And so just having that general understanding of how your own personal tools work helps you to learn more.
Yep. And then we've just discussed a lot of different cases. We did your case with the Kick app.
The Kick app, where the girl went missing, and we were able to recover her with the only lead that they had came from us being persistent and breaking into that technology, the hidden partition.
Yep.
And then we also talked about the other case that I had, which was the hidden partition and
Yep.
the
We did. You did the Kick app.
Yeah.
That was the more recent of the two.
Yep.
And that was with the girl.
That was the girl that was
right.
missing. And then the hidden partition was
one of the first episodes we did. Yeah.
Those are the two.
Yep. But both of those, it shows you never know what you're going to get. You don't know how big a case will be until afterwards. And you don't know the impact that you'll have until afterwards as well.
That's right. For sure. In fact, that same county that the Kick app, the girl went missing, the county sheriff's department actually contacted me recently at the college, asking me questions about our podcast and how he can get involved, how he can know more and learn. And I thought that was just ironic. And he doesn't even know that podcast is in relation to his county sheriff's department. So, yeah.
That's so interesting.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So it'll be fun.
So I mentioned earlier we did 6 episodes on Casey Anthony.
Yes.
We mentioned John Bradley.
Yes.
We also spoke to Larry Daniel.
Yes.
And kind of simultaneously, like we were doing that in the background, like you guys don't know who we're talking to and what we're prepping for. But then we also, I had spoken with Larry Daniel's son, Lars.
Yes, Lars Daniel.
And I never put it together because I was just like, Larry Daniel, Lars Daniel,
right.
It's a lot of people on LinkedIn, digital forensic examiners. And so we spoke to the father and son regarding different things. And Lars came back one day and was like, hey, I saw the Casey Anthony episode came out. Did you know my dad was the defense expert? And we said, yes, we do. And we've already spoken to him, and that episode's coming out.
Well, and ironically, when I was at the FBI and we had a defense expert come in to analyze a case that I had worked, and it was out in the Fort Smith resident agency, so out of the Little Rock area in one of our resident offices. And the agent asked me to come and set up for the defense expert to come and review and do all the review of the evidence. And it so happened to be Lars Daniel.
Yeah.
Went very young in his very infancy of getting into digital forensics. So Lars Daniel was the defense expert that came to analyze the case. So just know this community is very small.
Yep.
You get to know all these people. And then after we did the Epstein videos and Forbes reached out and asked to write a paper on or write an article on our work that we did with the Epstein files, that actually was Lars Daniel who was the author for. So you just never know.
Yeah, you never know who you'll cross paths with in the past. and then again in the future, and you don't know if it'll be for the prosecution or the defense, or maybe it flip flops. Now, did you and Lars have to both testify in that same case that he went out and did the review for?
We
Do you
didn't have
remember?
to testify.
Oh, okay.
It ended up being a plea deal. It
Oh,
ended
okay.
up pleading out.
Okay.
So there was no trial for it. But yeah, if it would have went to trial, Lars would have been the defense expert that had to testify, and I
Yep.
would have been
Yep.
the prosecutor's expert.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would have been funny.
I know, right? So you never know. And again, build your network. That is what we tell our students all the time. Build your network. Get to know this community. We are very connected in this community. We volunteer.
Becky, much more so. Becky knows all the people, much
Well,
more so.
Just I don't know about that.
Yes.
But
you
I
do.
would say get to know, to build your network. Stacy and I volunteer. We
Yep.
give advice. We take consulting calls. We share work. If it's out of my wheelhouse, I'm passing it to her, and if it's out of her wheelhouse, she's passing it to me. So we're there to help out in anything we're doing.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing this podcast, is to help get information out there and lessons learned, and get the stories out there too.
Right.
But let's loop back around to Casey Anthony. What was the most interesting or shocking thing that you learned as we dug into that case?
Wow, I would say how the experts were subpoenaed by both sides.
Yeah.
The defense and the prosecution, and how the defense, I'm going to say, strategized to use the prosecution's experts. I thought that was the most compelling for me.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I had not, as I usually do, like, I don't pay attention to any cases when they're going on, and I had only heard like the lesson learned. The lesson learned of Casey Anthony was to validate your tool results with another tool. But then we got in and we started watching the testimony, and then I was picking up on all the bizarre things that were happening during the trial. And when John Bradley was testifying, and I was like, he's reading someone else's report into the record. I go, I think that's what he's doing. I couldn't tell for sure. And then obviously we asked him later, and he's like, that wasn't my report. But then I also noticed at the end of John Bradley's testimony, when the defense was trying to get him to read in another report, the state hopped all over that and was like, that's not your report. Oh, you can't testify about that report. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I think just like actually watching and listening to the testimony and seeing all the little things that went down, and learning information from Larry about what was happening behind the scenes, and just looking back and seeing how much of it was a dance between the lawyers about what was happening and going on there.
Right. And that's it's again, we talk about it all the time, but your attorneys are the strategists. They are the ones that are going to utilize the experts to get the information into the court, and how they're going to do that. So just knowing that was and what we know as the first trial of digital evidence that went through, and how the defense utilized the experts, how the defense utilized reports that weren't written by the people that were testifying to them. It was all very interesting and compelling. Do you think the same strategies would be as effective now as they were back then? Or do you think people are more knowledgeable, and attorneys are more knowledgeable about how to strategize with digital evidence?
I think they think they're more knowledgeable, but I don't know that they necessarily are. But I think they, as we've seen in some other trials, they take the narrative, and by they I mean the lawyers, take the narrative that support their client the most and run with it. And if they can use digital evidence to do that, they will. And if the other side can use digital evidence to disprove it, discredit, they will.
That's right.
But the other thing I've found is I'm going back and really analyzing all of this stuff, not just listening to the news, but listening to the testimony, is going, wow, that was technical, that was complicated, that was so much information. And I just wonder how much of this is the jury understanding and picking up. Like, what is that saying? Are you
picking up everything I'm putting down?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
You
And
know?
that's the thing, is because if you get too technical in your
Right.
descriptions of the evidence, which we are going to discuss in future episodes as we analyze other people's testimony, you get too technical, you're going above your average juror's knowledge.
Yep.
And by not using analogies or breaking it down to be something that's visible or constructible by an individual that doesn't have the same technology knowledge, I don't know that it could be as effective.
Yep. Well, and I think part of the problem is you've got to introduce all of the evidence. So you've got to bring in like the background and the history and the technical stuff. But by the time you get to the why this is important, why this matters part, have you lost the jury?
Right.
I don't know, but I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's hard when you have like one digital forensics expert or vehicle expert after another. Like, how much is the jury taking away from that, especially if there's not a good like summary at the end, like what was the point of all of this, what was the meaning, and so what should we learn from this? I wish I would see something more obvious like that, like to wrap up each important block of the testimony. I'm not saying it's not out there, it's just not been out there in what we've been watching so far.
Right. And I'll be honest with you, the U.S. Attorney of Eastern District of Arkansas was an AUSA when I testified in a case for him. And I felt like he broke down that digital evidence best of anyone I've ever seen, in the sense that he laid it out there and he put text messages on these little blocks that look like phones, and he went back and forth and only pulled out the most relevant, compelling, shocking text messages, and then tied it all back into his closing arguments. And I think that if you have those visuals and you have those descriptions and you have those attorneys that are willing to go out there and really break it down to where it's how we look at our devices and communicate with our devices on a regular basis, is going to be useful in the future with court and testimony.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then I've also been surprised, just finishing up with Casey Anthony and John Bradley. John Bradley's episode on YouTube has been our number one watched, in this case, episode out there. So people were super interested to know what he had to say about his experience, because it was not out there.
Yeah, because from what we understood, and talking to John, from what we understood is that they took the words that came out of his mouth and they flipped them. The media exaggerated it. They took that 84 times and just made it a very big deal, and it wasn't. And no one ever asked to interview or get John's side of the story until you and I came along.
Yeah, he didn't get a chance to put the whole thing out there. When that stuff came out, he was interviewed a little bit, and then he went on the Dr. Phil show, I think, but it didn't get to go into what we got to go into on the podcast. And rumor has it he's going to have a book coming out. I don't know if we're supposed to say that yet or not. So
we might need to cut that out. But we'll ask him if we can say it.
Ask him if we can keep this out. But yeah, so there might be that to look forward to as well.
Yeah.
What's another episode you want to talk about, or episode series?
You know, I would say they've all been great, right? We've had the single ones where we bring people in and introduce them, and we talk about what they do. The Jamie with Cyber Reason, talking about business email compromise, and how people, really, suffer from a big loss of money from, threat actors getting into email accounts. So that one was really good. What are some other ones that received a lot of views? Do you recall? Sorry, there's an airplane going over.
Okay. I think on average we have a lot of the same number of listens. Although I will say, like, how to get into digital forensics is another top one. One I liked recording, enjoying, and liked the format and style of was recent, where we had the thing about Pam, where we brought Larry McLean on there, because I felt like, and I said it in one of the clips on social media, whether it was the post or I said it on video, I was like, I like that style because it was like, let's sit around like we do at lunch or after conferences, and we're just going to sit there and tell war stories. And everybody has a story to tell. It might be big, it might be small, it might be infamous, it might be unknown, but there's always something. And then people chime in with, oh my God, I had something similar, or, or we're just fascinated by what is happening and what they found out.
Yeah, and Larry's a great storyteller. He's just such a good storyteller. Funny, and just had so much knowledge and understanding from that case, even though there were parts that he didn't work, and then there were parts that he worked. And then just to know that a lot of these cases that we're talking about are documentaries or series, or and we have some more coming that are the same thing. So yeah.
Right. And Larry helped us put together some stuff behind the scenes, because the lawyer wrote a book, and just like the one with BTK, it was a little bit off.
Right.
Even though, like, that book, the thing about Pam was based on the court transcripts and affidavits and all that stuff. It's not 100%. And Larry said there was more computers, but then we also got the inside about, like, Betsy's phone wasn't initially examined, so that's why her texts were hearsay. And then about her laptop not being examined until 4 years later, which made us chuckle a little bit harder about that guy that was testifying on behalf of the state, to make it sound like it was super complicated to get that Word document off of that laptop.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's just been fun. Stacy and I, we're both very busy with our jobs and our jobs.
Yeah, jobs.
That? And we love sharing knowledge. We love sharing technology and ideas and thoughts and all that. But we love getting together and bringing you guys this podcast, and bringing the experts from the field, and bringing the stories from the field. And I think that has been the best part of this podcast. And it just was on a whim that Stacy and I reconnected at IASIS in person. We reconnected earlier in the year through LinkedIn. And then it was like, hey, let's start a podcast. Okay. And then we recorded our first one the very next week, and we haven't missed a beat. And it's been so much fun.
It is. It's fun. It's a lot of work. We're here to bring you, like, the facts. And so obviously we have to sit down and research it. And I mean, we had that one episode, which was Elspeth Battles AI, and that was based on a TV show. And that was a little short one, but it was just kind of fun to get in there.
I got some great comments about that one. Someone was like, I love Elspeth, and I love hearing about your ideas behind the Elspeth show. But the Epstein files.
Oh yeah, how could we forget the Epstein files? Okay.
Wow.
Why did we do the Epstein files?
So because we want you guys to have the truth and the knowledge, and that is the name of our podcast, Parsing the Truth, because when information is released and it's incorrect, and then people capitalize and write articles on the incorrect information, we feel compelled to bring it to you and share. We feel it necessary for us to bring you the truth and break it down. So we really spent some time on that and learned a lot as well.
Yeah, and I mean, there was The Wire, Wired. They started it and said, 3 missing minutes and sort of stuff. And then they're like, now we're going to have this great podcast episode where we're going to dive deep into it. And we got nothing. And then everybody's freaking out over it. And what could we find? So we're like, let's look at it.
Right.
And so we did. And we're, the biggest takeaway off the first release of the Epstein videos from in the jail was those were not raw files.
They weren't.
And then
user created.
A couple of weeks or maybe a month after we did that episode, then the DOJ released more files to Congress, who then threw that up on a Google Drive to download more stuff. And lo and behold, we found what is likely the actual raw video footage, and then there was no longer that cutoff at 12:58:58. It rolls straight through. Or excuse me, there is no longer that cutoff at 11:58:58. It rolls straight through to midnight, and then it just raises more question. Why did Ms. Bondi say there was a reboot? So
because there was no reboot. We proved that. We saw that. There's no
it just
reboot.
rolls on.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that if this is happening,
your conspiracy theories
yeah,
here.
Yeah, supports conspiracy theories, and it also makes organizations look bad. If examiners are making statements like this, or this happens in the courtroom, I mean, this is all digging away at credibility.
Right. And that's one thing that you as an expert have to remember is, even though Stacy and I have our own companies, we do our own expert work, we also have to be very mindful of the fact that any opposing individual or attorney that is going to pull in, we're going to get pulled into a case, they're going to watch these and they're going to see if they can find anything contextual that we have said that would discredit us. And that is why we tell the truth. Yep. We break it down and we give you the ideas and the thoughts and the understanding of how digital forensics as experts works.
Yep. That's why we focus on the facts, because the facts are the facts. Sometimes you might have to draw a conclusion.
That's right.
Sometimes you might have to make an opinion. But the facts are the facts.
And ones and zeros.
Not X's and O's.
Not X's and O's. Who said X's and O's?
That was that we were watching a true crime podcaster talking about some Kara Reed stuff. She was prompted by the same thing that we were watching on Karen Reed, and so she was going to clap back and say why they were wrong. And then she was talking about the X's and O's on the hard drive.
That's right. And we're like,
hugs and kisses?
She didn't say X's and O's. Okay.
I guess there are lots of hugs and
ones and zeros.
Hugs and kisses. No, I think she's meant there's lots of hugs and kisses on the phones and the hard drives.
Yeah, there probably is.
It's all those emojis getting out of control. XO, XO, XO.
Yeah. So it's black and white. If the evidence is there, it's hard to dismiss it. It's hard to try and not include it in. And so then the best way that attorneys have found to discredit the evidence that's coming in, and we saw this, we've seen this in some trials that we've been watching, is the person, is your degree an earned degree? Is your certifications still valid, or have they expired and you have not listed them as expired on your CV? Are there things on your CV that aren't correct, or is there something out there that they can go and focus on your social media accounts, or your public speaking, or your presentations, or your presence in general to discredit you?
They're attacking you as a person. I've experienced it at the stand, and when it's coming at you, maybe you take it more personally, like they're attacking me and asking questions like, well, did you do this? And you say no, and then where do you stop? No, I didn't, because that's your job. And how far do you go down that path? And so, but luckily, like, your attorney on your side should have that chance to move back around and help you recover and ask the questions to explain why is your answer no, and why is it a good thing that your answer was no, or whatever it was. So it's certainly, the whole job is stressful, right? For numerous reasons, no matter which side you're working on. It gets more stressful when you go to trial. And then it's even more stressful if you're in a court that allows video cameras in.
That's right. That's right.
And tapes
and then
everything.
We can go and watch the videos and be like, oh, maybe that is something good to note as far as how that was answered and that question was used and that evidence was gained access into the court system.
Yep. But for sure, even if you're not watching court cases, skip through, go back and watch them, because that is free training and education. You can go back and cross-reference with your notes, what you know, maybe do some testing, make some notes on it, because then when it comes up in your case, you can be like, aha, and you can go back and be like, well, what did the prosecution say? What did the defense say? What do I know about this? Do I agree? Do I disagree with one of them or neither of them, or what is happening there? So I think that's a great resource we need to leverage
Absolutely
better.
And I love how Stacy has brought it to my attention through this podcast and through us doing this together, about how much knowledge is out there that we can watch to better ourselves, to make us better experts, better examiners. And watching someone else do it, and their composure and their professionalism, and when they're getting attacked, how they respond, it's all a learning process. It's a very good way to learn how to testify if you are working cases that will end up in court.
Yep. And the one thing they always do is they try to make a big deal about, like, how many times have you testified? And they're like, oh, it's only a few times. It doesn't, that, I wish there was somewhere on your CV where you could be like, well, I did such a great job, so all of these people pled, or I wrote a report and then they dropped the charges, or I showed up in court and then they dropped the charges. I wish they're like, where do we get to keep that little scoreboard of all the great work we do before it gets to trial?
That's right.
And makes it so it doesn't get to trial.
I mean, it's interesting you say that. Just like when someone's about to go to trial and they want to bring in an expert and they say, just bring me your CV, you turn the CV over, and then the next thing you know, the case has settled. And so it's like, did the case settle because they know that they had an expert? Did the case settle because they had their ducks in a row? Were they unable to challenge the digital data that was about to be presented? And so just know that pristine, accurate, truthful work can be
very powerful.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, it makes the difference between going to court sometimes.
Yeah.
So and that's why a good written report is very powerful, because if you lay it all out there, they'll be like, and dismiss. No.
Right. And then they realize, oh, this is going to be, through their strategy, very hard to challenge. And then if you have a very good presence, very good professionalism, your CV is accurate and truthful, they can't even go after you as a witness. They can't discredit you in any way. So they have to change their strategy, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just part of the process.
Right. But as much as we say, the facts are the facts and it's black and white, there are still cases.
Truck in the background.
Let him finish shifting out of whatever he's doing.
He's shifting.
But there are still cases where the experts vehemently disagree about
sure.
what an artifact means. So it is hard, and it's, as much as we say it's black and white, there is some interpretation of the data going on for sure, because otherwise if you didn't have to do that part of the interpretation, then tools would just spit out reports and we wouldn't have jobs.
Right. And it goes back to knowing your tools and validating and testing. I've been working with Stacy on something that she's been validating and testing, and it's just like, hey, download this and send me something so I can see what it looks like on this end of the process. And it goes back to knowing your tools and validating and testing and being accurate, because the tools aren't going to get it all the time. They're not going to be right every time. Every time there's a new update and release and a version and all the things, the tools have to get caught up too. And so you might miss something.
That's always going to be our struggle. The tools always have to get caught up. There is always that lag. You're always going to be manually looking at something either with a native tool or like looking at it in hex, trying to figure out what's going on.
I think this Oxygen Forensics opened my eyes up to some things. And one was the company Metadata Forensics and the fact that there's no commercial tool.
Right.
No. Briggs's, Alexis Brignoni's iLeap tool.
Yep.
But there's no commercial tool that will break out group calls on iPhones.
Right. And so Patrick Eller's company, they did all this work and research, testing and validation, and then they gave it to Briggs and they built it into iLeap.
Yeah. So know that too, is that you can't, sometimes you're in the middle of court testimony and a question is asked and you're like, ooh, I got to run back to the lab and test something really quick just to see, because I don't know the answer to that. And it's okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you can then, seek the answer.
Yep.
So I found that to be a fascinating presentation.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll have Patrick on our show.
We're going to get him on here at some point. He and his business are crazy busy. He testifies a lot. And
I think
consults.
I think he said he's testified over 150 times in court. So that's great. Now that we're getting close to winding this down, 26 episodes and fun.
Yep.
What are your thoughts? How do you feel about it? What do we see coming in the next 26 episodes?
What do we see coming in the next 26 episodes? Well, let's see. So that'll take us through to like mid-May-ish of next year. I mean, we've got to do the big one. We've got to do Karen Reed.
Yeah.
We joked that that'll be the 52 episode series starting sometime in 2026. We hope to break that down and not do 52 episodes, not even 26 episodes on that one. But there is so much to take away from that case. And I've already listened to both trials twice. Taking lots of notes on that. It's just so big and so complicated, and to give you the value add, that is the big one I obviously see coming. What are you looking forward to? Or
I've made a list of experts that we have coming on, different cases that they're going to talk about, some that are, that have marked the way that they've known digital forensics. One, Boston Marathon bombing, good friend of mine, that is going to come on. We'd love to look at the Murdaugh murder cases, because that has some really good digital forensics in it.
Yep, and some great testimony as well.
Absolutely. And then, others. We have other people that we have grown up with, I would say, coming on to talk about cases that they've worked and that have also been episodes on Caught in the Net or Dateline or something like that. So just be looking out. I'm ready. This will be fun. Getting our friends on and our former colleagues and some of our new networks of experts come on and talk about cases. So
Well, another thing, and I know we've talked about this, but not as a podcast idea. I think it's the whole us versus them mentality. We should talk about how that has evolved over time, because maybe you haven't experienced, but if you're old, you might have. And I think that's worth seeing where we were and where we're at today, with that sort of mentality.
Right. And Stacey and I even brought that to Oxygen Forensics on our live episode that will air in a couple weeks, where we talk about what has happened in the last 25 years. How it has gone from what it was, 1.44 megabyte floppy disk, to 40 terabyte in 2027 being developed by Toshiba. So it's that mass data overload, and we have it coming to you.
So we just want to thank you all for watching, listening, and sharing the podcast, sharing your knowledge and experience and ideas. And of course, never stop reaching out to us. If you've got that case we've just got to talk about, make sure to let us know so we can get you on here and share the facts of your case too.
That's right. So until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and keep parsing the truth one bite at a time.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us to get notified the next time a new episode drops. If you can do more, head on over to parsingthetruth.com and donate by clicking on the donate button. Parsing the Truth is a nonprofit organization, and we are raising money to send a new digital forensic examiner to IASIS training next year in Orlando. Thanks.